but I wanted to talk about weed.
I'm always down.
You don't need a segue for that. You don't need a segue for that.
Yeah.
Like, it's cannabis time.
Yeah, how's Nick doing? Because you've been kind of doing abstinence for like the last week, so you've been coping
I've been
well.
looking at the calendar. I'm so hyped because you guys know there's no way I am being sober on 420, right? So I did this tolerance break, waiting for 420. So I'm looking at the calendar and I'm hyped. I talked it back to JB.
Okay, so marijuana was just legalized in New York for recreational use. So awesome, yay! What timeline do you think that it will be legalized when it's on the national level, or do you think it will ever happen? Because there was actually a Vox article that just came out. It talks about the marijuana legalization in Virginia, and it's actually the first southern state to actually legalize marijuana.
Any one of us or Ron specifically?
You can start with that, RJ.
Well, here's my perspective on this. The only way I believe we'll actually get marijuana legalization passed is probably by a Republican president or administration. And what do you mean, RJ? What are you talking about? Well, here's why.
Yes,
the marijuana business itself is decentralized, meaning that, it could be their local drug dealer, it could be a local business. But if Republicans figure out a way to centralize this whole money game and make their own marijuana industrial complex, then they'll become legalized, because then the big corporations will come together, they'll monopolize the market, and then they'll sell it to the American people at an even higher price than originally now. So I know I probably gave them an idea, but that's kind of, I think, the only way it's going to go. Because, I mean, look at Joe Biden right now. Joe Biden is supposed to be, like I said, Uncle Joe wearing aviator sunglasses looking ice cream. He's supposed to be the most progressive since FDR. And when people ask him, hey, Uncle Joe, all you have to do is sign a pen and legalize marijuana or even decriminalize it. And Kamala says, oh, we're too fucking busy. Fuck you. So the morale is like way low right now in terms of actually getting that passed. But I do believe like states overall are starting to figure the fuck out. Hey, tax the motherfucker. Who cares? You can collect tax revenue to pay for goods and services in your state. It's a very good idea. People love fucking weed. Who cares? Put it in brownies. Put it in drinks. Who gives a fuck? Let people smoke. Leave people alone, and you make your money too. So that's kind of what my perspective is. Let it state-wise is great. And yeah, that's kind of the route we have to do until the federal government wakes its ass up. I mean, you know how much money the federal government can make by doing a sales tax on weed federally? Like, come on, you could pay for a lot of goods and services for that.
Mm-hmm. Ron, so what are your opinions about this regarding the lovely green Mary Jane?
I think if I had to take a guess, I'd say within 10 years, we might see something federal. I think we eventually will. I think RJ's prediction is pretty solid. Like, it'll happen with the Republican president because, again, it gets back to capitalism. They already realize there's a market for this. I mean, John Boehner already got his piece of the pie. So I do think we're going in that direction. Obviously, public opinion's been there for years and years and years. But I think you're going to see it's going to get to the point where more states are going to have it than not. We're basically even Utah's been looking at it, for crying out loud. South Dakota has been looking at it. So, I mean, I think it's going to get to the point where more states are going to have legalized pot, at least for medicinal, than don't have it. And eventually it's just going to be federal, which, in some ways that is very depressing, but in other ways it is very encouraging because, I mean, I remember when we thought we would never overcome the propaganda of the drug war. And this was that we're talking like 2008. We're not talking a long time ago. We never thought we would possibly overcome that. And then one state did, and then another state did, and then another and another and another. So that kind of thing does give me actually a little bit of optimism. And this gets back to, grassroots and doing something in your own backyard. And, I think I don't want to have too much cross-pollination of issues here or muddy the waters in the conversation, but I think that that's what we're going to see with healthcare. I think that there will be a state that gets single payer, which again is not the ideal way. We'd be much better off with federal Medicare for all. But hey, the ends will justify the means. I think a state's going to get it. And when a state gets it, another state's going to follow, and then another one, and then another one, and that's how we're going to get Medicare for all. I wish that wasn't the way, but I think that's the way it's going to go down, and that's okay because it'll get us to where we need to be. But I think it's eventually states kind of lead the way. So,
Nick, your thoughts?
So people always wonder why I call Joe Biden a unhinged far right winger. I mean, I plead. I'm trying to stop myself from doing it too. So it's something I'm trying to stop doing, calling them moderates and centrists. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden is not a moderate. He's not a centrist in any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at the numbers here. This is from Pew. 55% of Republicans back the legalization of marijuana. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is firing staff because they have previous marijuana use in a city where marijuana is legal. So I covered the fact because I actually look at polls. Don't ever read the headlines of polls and just take it at that because it's always bullshit. It's always. So they're always trying to frame our push for Medicare for all and public and just pretty much single payer healthcare as realistic. 1 out of 4 Republicans support Medicare for all. Do you guys know how crazy that is? Like, if you listen to corporate news and how they present single payer healthcare as unhinged, crazy, far left policy, you would never think. You would think the number would be like 1 out of 20, 1 out of 10 if you listen to CNN or MSNBC. Oh, we can't run on Medicare for all because that's unpopular. They'll make a lose in red states, even though this past election, the people who did they did pretty well. So what is my overall point? Now, take that to the next level, where you have Republicans who 54% of them support a public option. So these two issues are related because these are two issues that Biden and his administration was running on. Joe Biden already was to the right of majority of the American people because he said, "No, I don't think we should legalize. I think we should decriminalize." And now there was a report from like a week or two ago how they walking back decriminalizing marijuana, and Kamala Harris said, "We are too busy delivering for the American people to end the war on drugs." And people take these people seriously? So Joe Biden is effectively to the right of Republican voters on healthcare and on the decriminalization of marijuana and the legalization of marijuana. And yet people think I'm crazy when I say Joe Biden's a far right winger. This is why I'm trying to I don't do it all the time, but I'm trying to stop myself from calling Biden a moderate because he's not. So that's why when RJ says more likely to happen under the Republican president, I'm like, that doesn't shock me because the Overton window is completely shattered, and it's gonna just take someone who just want to win because 16 in 2020 could have been just straight up decided by a president who's I just legalize marijuana. The margin was so close in a lot of these battlegrounds. I literally think that could have been the turning point in a lot of these people for these races. But Trump is a moron. He was a puppet. He didn't want to do it. But this is just such an easy win. That and universal health care. But none of the parties want to do it because they are more interested in keeping the corporate duopoly than actually winning election. They rather lose representing their donors than actually win running on popular policy. So that's why I think it's a mistake for anyone to consider Biden a right winger, which apparently healthcare and this kind of stuff is not important to progressives. They ran on it, but apparently not important to bring up anymore, I guess.
Well, I call people who identify as moderate in the United States, I usually refer to them as conservatives in denial. And I don't even mean it as an insult. It's just accurate. Calling Joe Biden a right winger is accurate. And if you're quote unquote moderate by United States standards, you would be considered not just right wing, you would be considered far right in any other pseudo democratic experiment. You wouldn't just because you'd be considered far right in any other, even in think about this. England, out of they're not in the EU anymore because of Brexit, but out of all those countries, England is considered the big right wing country compared to the rest of them. They're whoa, they're pretty far right. Boris Johnson and the Tories are to the left of the Democratic Party. And the toys are awful, by the way. I'm not like, usually whenever I say this, I get an email from someone in England going, Ron, the toys are awful. Like, I know they're awful. I'm saying that the Democrats are even freaking worse. And that's our alternative to the most conservative option, supposedly. So yeah, I mean, calling Joe Biden moderate is absolutely ridiculous. I was so bothered by the whole like, oh, well, he's going to be like an FDR. You know what people should have said instead? But they didn't say this. And the reason they didn't say this was because it might actually lead people to action. Instead of saying Joe Biden could be our generation's FDR, they should have said, here's what they should have said. Joe Biden could be our generation's LBJ. What do I mean by that? Yeah. LBJ was a fucking asshole. LBJ was a prick. But LBJ signed some things that he didn't want to sign because he knew he had no other fucking choice. So is it okay if I curse on this, by the way?
Oh, I just cursed like so many times today. We're good.
I curse on the sailor.
I kind of just let it out. But yeah. So they should have said that would actually inspire people to action. Like not sugarcoating what Joe Biden is. He is a demented right winger, and that's being generous for what Joe Biden is, and he's a racist. So they should have said he could be our LBJ. If we have a big enough movement that I think needs to come in the form of a general strike where he looks outside and he says, if I don't sign some stuff, this place is going to completely just go off the rails, then we might get some decent policies out of this administration.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I was going to say about the LBJ point, which is actually what Ron is saying is pretty accurate. LBJ, how he looked at a lot of these movements is he turned their issue into his issue and made it personal. So, for instance, with civil rights, so black people marching, yada, 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 they want civil rights. So LBJ, he would go to his Dixiecrat friends. He said, look, if you don't get along with me, I will fucking crush you because this is my issue. I want it now. So that's how he was able to get his Great Society programs with the war on poverty. He started getting a lot of that through too. Signed with Medicare, the Voting Rights Act, yada, yada, yada. And so I think that methodology would have been a lot better because also too, you're putting Joe Biden in a trap because now you're comparing LBJ, a person who made it illegal for all black people to vote and to not be discriminated against based on sex and gender. And now you're saying, Joe Biden, look, we got you. You have to do this now. But I think doing FDR by being it so far back and really in FDR, if you look at every historical poll, he's in the top 3 in terms of greatest presidents of all time. You're really setting the bar very, very high. And we all know Joe Biden, he won the presidency by the lowest of bars. So I think it's just political malpractice what Bernie and a lot of progressives are doing by comparing Joe Biden to FDR. So it's just
and again, by comparing him to LBJ, you really have a heavy call to action to people. FDR, who, by the way, was not perfect. We all know this. FDR was far from perfect. But FDR did have foresight. He realized what society needed at the time, and he was willing to meet the moment. Joe Biden couldn't tell you what he ate for breakfast. His brain is oatmeal at best. He doesn't have anything resembling foresight. But he is a horrible, demented politician who you can put into a corner. And that's where I think the LBJ comparison would be useful.
Yeah, and this, I'm sorry, JB, I'll say this and I'll let you go, but we have had 3 different types of presidents, the last 3 presidents we have. We had a guy like Donald Trump who is, look, I don't give a fuck as long as it makes me look good and I stay elected. We had Obama who was like, look, fuck you and your ideology. We're going with my ideology. If you don't fucking like it, deal with it. And then we got a guy like Joe Biden where he's like, look, I like old money, oil, credit card companies, big pharma. That's good. Old money is safe money. That's why Joe Biden loves them. Because when in doubt, he can always lean on to win. New money, which Obama really likes, like us, like Facebook, Instagram, like big tech, for instance, that's very unstable, especially back then, and politically because they're new to the game. And so that's kind of the situations we have. And that's why it makes it even more difficult to push them for specific policies. When you have politicians who make it all about themselves in terms of, okay, it's my way or the highway, versus you using a movement, making it your own to actually push those policies through, that's what makes it even more difficult.